Well, late last week, I sat down for an exclusive interview with Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. You should go check it out on the YouTube channel, and it's fascinating. We talked about his beef with Elon Musk, the fallout from the deadly DC plane crash. But there's one segment in particular that I want to put a focus on. Check it out.
Let's make sure that next generation of transportation, whether it's again, autonomous, or whether it's in an eVTOL or it's a drone technology, that happens here. And the testing happens here. And then the jobs that are created around that industry are American jobs. If we don't, you wouldn't look to China. And if China actually develops this technology and we import it here, and you have cameras and sensors on these drones or autonomous vehicles, that is a huge problem. That is a national security risk.
This is a pretty significant shift on automation from Trump's first term in office. Back then, you had thought leaders like Tucker Carlson talking about how self-driving cars and drones would decimate the trucking industry. But what caused this break? Obviously, you have tons of money in Silicon Valley backing Trump, plus Musk himself right now. But if you pay attention to Duffy's words, he wrapped this whole debate around China. National security and China is running all of Donald Trump's policy decisions. It's something that I do think he can get help from the other side of the aisle on. And as we move down the line, this technology could actually boost jobs here in America. It's an interesting dilemma and one that I didn't expect going into that interview.
I mean, Christian, you know me, I'm Scrooge McDuck, so I'm totally aligned with Duffy here. But this is a recurring theme that we discussed at the end of last year. The idea of this total ideological civil war and polarization within the Trump administration. Because what Duffy is expressing here, which I believe is the correct belief that a rising tide lifts all boats, that going forward with technological advancement advances the economy and does create jobs, is totally incongruous with what you're hearing Peter Navarro saying about tariffs and J.D. Vance saying about we need to bring back old school manufacturing jobs. And I know we'll get to more of the trade war in a moment, but what do you think it says that Duffy has no qualms about expressing this, pro-growth, pro-development worldview, which again, I think is the correct one, but with no compunction when you consider what other parts of the Trump administration is saying?
Well, you can sort of describe it in two opposing ways, Tiana. The first is, I think, what you hit on. You have sort of these ideological camps within the cabinet, which is good. We want multilateralism. We don't want groupthink. This is how you sort of whittle down and improve ideas and implementation strategy. So I like that in that regard. The bad way to look at this is that Donald Trump is simply checked out, right? He doesn't necessarily care about what's happening at these individual departments, and he's letting the secretaries or the agency heads sort of take the lead on dictating their own policy. I'm not sure which one of these explanations is true. In reality, it's probably a little bit of both. But at least I think this is a good idea or a good development in terms of a non-talked about agency like transportation, which in reality impacts everyday Americans quite literally every day. When you're talking about how do you get to work? Do you take a new highway? Do you take the subway? Obviously, we saw the deadly plane crash in January and their efforts to improve safety in that regard. This is something where Donald Trump can reach across the aisle, take down the temperature and say, again, we are trying to innovate. We're not trying to go back to the past. Progressives, you're always calling for progress. This is an area where there could be some real bipartisan accord, I think.
Some Ezra Klein style abundance here, right? Maybe we could get, the more moderate Dems on board. And Christian, this is a pretty good foray into what I'm focusing on. The idea that what does Trump really care about during this presidency? Where is he showing leadership and whatnot?
Well, so is that the story you're going to be talking about? Was that a tee up for something down the line? What's the big one on your plate this week, Tiana?